to get us started, something I need to just put out at the beginning. Is there anybody in this room willing to say, I don't believe the Bell Witch is true? If so, raise your hand. Me, you, hope nothing bad happens to you. And so, you don't believe, sir, and you don't believe, and I don't believe. And so that's why I wrote a book that was very different from what everybody else had done. And I'll talk to you about why I don't believe the Bell Witch is true, what really happened. So, and by the way, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you back there. But quite often, where were we last week?
Eddyville.
In Eddyville.
Yeah.
In Eddyville. I had one hand going
Yeah.
like this. And so, the Bell Witch legend, I grew up with it, and you grew up with it, and I'm a writer, I'm a historian by training. It took me 20 years to get out of Vanderbilt. That's where rich people went, and I wasn't a rich person. 20 years to get out, but I did. Went to work for myself and went all over the United States working in about 40 counties I worked in, or states, and 3 or 4 Canadian places. And I never was any place where some people, any place where everybody knew the Bell Witch, but almost nobody would say that they didn't. I just asked. You know, before we get started, I'm from Robertson County, and I'm up in San Francisco. Anybody in here believe the Bell Witch not true? Like that, even far away places. So, and I'm semi-retired, and so I thought I'm gonna start writing books. So I wrote the Bell Witch book that University of Tennessee Press. Is that okay if I talk about University of Tennessee Press?
It's okay.
And my next book, and the editor of the Tennessee Press called me yesterday and going, Rick, I'm waiting for the next book. The next book is going to be on the Tobacco Night Riders. And so I'll be happy to come and run my mouth with you on that when I get around to it. And we're close to getting it to Knoxville. So, the Bell Witch. Where did I look up here at my little book that I wrote?
Oh, right there.
Oh, it's right there in front of me. 43 years and she's still telling me what to do. Join the crowd. Looking around the room, I expect there's other men that agree with me as well. And by the way, if I'm in trouble, can I spend the night here in Russell? Not here, but wherever a good place would be. I'll rent a room. Go let me back up. Okay. All right. When I published my book on the Bell Witch, I got an offer from the Custom House Museum and Cultural Center in, not Russellville, Clarksville. And they also said, write an article for us that we can put in our magazine. It's called The Second in Commerce. Now, I did. In the first part, I didn't write, but it's a quote. If history was written in the form of stories, it would never be forgotten. Rudyard Kipling. Now, this was mine. I believe that stories are some of the best gifts that we give to each other. Some stories are humorous, some are sentimental, some are scary, some are the scariest of them all, especially in this region, was the Bell Witch legend. And then here's some quotes that not from me, but from books written about the Bell Witch. The Bell Witch is regarded as America's most celebrated supernatural mystery, the most terrifying ghost story in the world, America's #1 ghost. That's just one of dozens of things like that that I could say to you. And this didn't come from me, in a book that I read about literature. In ancient Greek literature, a comedy had a happy ending, even if some bad events occurred. A tragedy has a sad ending, even if some happy things happen. The Bell Witch legend is a tragedy that includes some comedic events. The core of the Bell Witch saga begins with, and most of you probably heard this, a scratch, a knock, and a whisper, and ends in a death. Anybody know who the death was? John Bell. And then many more. And by the way, I've been told by people, I'll be one of them if I quit saying this story's not true. But here I am. I've been all over the country, and here I am. By the way, I'm not scared of the Bell Witch. I'm scared of her. A retired school teacher. But I'm not scared of the Bell Witch. I'm really sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Now, the Bell Witch story. There's some other stories before the Bell Witch story, or were famous as well in this area where you live and where we live. All right, the Carrs Creek Critter, that's Robertson County. Anybody know the Carrs Creek Critter? You do, you're from Robertson County. Yep, Robertson County. So, Carrs Creek Critter, these boys got together and they started telling people, oh, at school and their parents and at church, oh, we saw this critter. This critter was down by Carrs Creek, this little place that runs into Red River. Oh, and it chased us down and it was trying to kill us. Oh, and so the parents got involved and they called the police and the police got involved. They put helicopters in the sky and the Robertson County newspaper, actually we had two back then, both newspapers ran stories on the front page about Carrs Creek Critter. After about a couple, 3 months, they said, we were joking. It didn't happen. But there's still people in Robertson County today that'll tell you, yeah, there was a Carrs Creek Critter out there.
And that's a picture of it.
And that's a picture of it up there. I wouldn't want to fool with it. But it was just a story these boys made up. Now, this one closer home. How close are we to Kelly, Kentucky? Kelly?
45 minutes or so.
35 minutes or so. Everybody know the Little Green Men of Kelly, Kentucky? It goes like this. And by the way, I have had people from Kelly, Kentucky tell me, now Rick, this story is true. And then I've had others go, oh, Rick, of course that story is not true. But the way the Little Green Men of Kelly, Kentucky, the story went like this. A bunch of people that live close to each other on farms, they said, we heard something and we went out and we saw this spaceship landed and these little green men came out of it and they started shooting us with space guns. Well, we had our guns, we shot back at them and we scared them back enough. They got back in there and all right. They said, we went to Hopkinsville to the police, and this part's true. And the police in Hopkinsville got involved, went around, looked around, called Fort Campbell, and got Fort Campbell involved, and it never happened. But there's still people today that'll say, yes, Rick, it happened, because my daddy told me about it, or my mama, or my granddaddy. And so, it didn't happen. And I was, when in Hopkinsville opened a new museum about a year or two ago, William Turner. I don't know if some of you know William. He's one of the best historians anywhere, and one of the best storytellers anywhere. And me and him, and the third person, Bill Cunningham. Anybody know Bill Cunningham? He's further away from here in Kentucky, back there. matter of fact, we were where he was from yesterday. Anyway, William got us together and he called us the Black Patch Three, and we went all over Kentucky and Tennessee and spoke about the Night Riders. And we did it again last year, and William's not feeling real well now, but if he feels better, we'll do it again. And it's just wonderful. You'll come up here, we'll come up here.
That's good.
And so, all right. So, these are myths, but people believe them and still believe them when there's absolutely no proof about it whatsoever. So Bell Witch is not the only thing that we believe that we can't prove that happened. But next. Now, the origin of the Bell Witch story. And people like to think, well, it started in Adams. And by the way, we live in Adams, Tennessee, on the Red River, about 2 miles from the Bell Witch Cave. So I really shouldn't be saying this, because we live fairly close to the cave. And I'll talk more about the cave in a bit. Now, North Carolina. And by the way, North Carolina, when the state could not pay its soldiers in the Revolutionary War, it gave them land in the Western Territory, and in Tennessee, the Western Territory was where I live. And so, a lot of stories from North Carolina came with it. And by the way, when Virginia could not pay its soldiers, they gave land in the Western Territory. Where was that? Here. And areas close to here. So very similar that both states have something. And then, by the way, when people come, they bring their stories with them. So, North Carolina, there was a story of Old Nance. And Old Nance, and I bet some of you know this. This is the version of it that's spread around, but it started with the Old Nance story. Anybody have this one? Where look in a mirror, look in the mirror, and according to where you're at, what you had to say it, but say a phrase, and then in the mirror, you see her, and maybe even talk to you. And so, a lot of the stuff that became Bell Witch started with this Old Nance story from North Carolina. Now, the Tennessee Bell Witch story. John Bell and his people came from North Carolina, and they got land in what's now Robertson County, where I live, and they brought ideas with them about the Bell Witch story, and I'm gonna go into it more in just a bit. But that story started in the early 1800s, and Mississippi. You asked me about Mississippi a little bit ago. Now, is there any men in this room had a women in their 80s threaten to beat you up? You're smiling, does that mean yes? And you're shaking your head, yes. Now, this is true story. True story. I've spoken all around about the Bell Witch legend and rugby. Anybody here been to rugby up in East Tennessee? One of my favorite places to go. And 2 or 3 years ago, for a couple of weeks, I was their storyteller for rugby in the fall. And of course, guess what they wanted me to talk about? The Bell Witch. And so I talked to the group, and I think twice. We were there for 2 weeks. It was wonderful to be up in that area, not quite mountains, but real hilly and good people, good food. And so I said, the story's not true. It's an incredible story, but it's not true. Well, the next day, my wife and I are sitting in chairs, having a good morning, talking with each other and other people that are coming by. And I look up, and 2 old ladies with canes come walking by, and they stop, and one of them said, "Come here," talking to me. Guess what I did? I came there. And so I walked out. My wife was afraid to go too. She stayed up where we were sitting. And one of them said, "You were telling lies in that story. You were telling lies. This story's true." You know how we know it's true? Because it doesn't come from Tennessee. And you said this started in Tennessee. It is not. This story belongs to Mississippi. And so next time you talk, you make sure you say this is going to come from Mississippi. What do you say to old women with 80s, with canes threatening to whoop you? I've been threatened to be whooped by much younger, but never two women with canes. And I said, ladies, it's been nice talking to you. I promise I won't say nothing else about the Bell Witch while I'm here. But what happened, some members of the Bell family, when John Bell died, some members of the Bell family, including his wife, who survived, some of his children, and some other people from our area,
His daughter,
and
Betsy.
and daughter Betsy, which is a key player in the story, they all went to Mississippi. And when they went to Mississippi, what they carry with them? Stories. And so these ladies said, don't ever come into Mississippi and say this story isn't from Mississippi. Everybody there knows that it is. So, and guess what I did? Thank you, ladies.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. You're a wise man. Yes, ma'am, ladies, I'm sorry. And my wife's not even taking up for me. I think you went inside. And so, anyway, this story has power, not just in Tennessee, in our part of where it happened. It happened within, 3 or 4 miles from where we live. But this story is all over. And so, and more than just in the United States. And I'll talk about that in a bit. Next. All right, the Tennessee story. Tennessee stories. John Bell and his family moved from North Carolina to Robertson County, as I mentioned, because they got land because of the Revolutionary War. And the first few years, everything went well. They farmed, and they went to a church locally, and they loved where they were. They were not having any problems whatsoever. But then, this is how the legend goes, strange things starts to happen. Strange things starts to happen. They saw that animals that they did not recognize. You know, coming from North Carolina, they thought, well, they got different animals here than what we had up there. But then more and more, they were seeing strange looking animals. And one day, John Bell saw an animal with 2 heads. And that, by the way, that story has about 5 different ways to tell it. And had 2 heads, and he fired at it, hit it, or sure he would, he just ran away. He went in the house, found some of his people, brought them out, it was gone. And he told other people that he shot at this animal. And other people started saying, oh, well, we saw things too. We've seen things. But if you've seen something, I've seen something too. You people enjoy your talk, they'll enjoy my talk. And so people start telling their stories. And Betsy, by the way, along with John Bell, Betsy's the most important person in the story, because it's Betsy that the witch starts doing horrible things to. But Betsy comes running in the house one day and said that she saw a young woman hanging with a loop around its nose. It's right below the chin, and stuff is coming out of her mouth. And ran in the house to find somebody to come out, and they do, and it's gone. And John Bell and his wife Lucy said, quit talking, saying those kind of things, making those things up. But I didn't make them up. It was there. And then later on, she'll see it again, and other people will see it. But that was a beginning that something's going on in the area. And one that became very famous in the Bell house, and then other people's houses later, they'd hear a scratch, especially trying to sleep at night. They'd hear a scratch. And of course you what?
I have that at home. I live in a hole.
And so you hear scratches. I'm but loud enough that they couldn't sleep. They couldn't sleep. And they also heard knocks. Finally, they started hearing a whisper. In the beginning, it didn't make any, it just made sounds, but no words. And then it started saying words. And finally, when it's saying words, John Bell one night said, "What are you doing this for? Why are you here?" And she said, "I come to kill you, John Bell." And he said, "Why?" "Just because you deserve killing." And that's how the story, that's a key part of the story, and how it grew. A scratch, a knock, and a whisper. Now, John Bell and Betsy are who physically the Bell witch did horrible things to. They made life miserable, not just emotionally, but physically. Hurting John Bell, and eventually she'd say, "I'm gonna hurt you for a long time. I'm not gonna kill you right now. I'm gonna hurt you for a long time, but I'm gonna kill you." And Betsy kept doing really bad things to Betsy. And by the way, Betsy was thinking about getting married, and the witch said, "No, don't get married." And then as part of the story would go, the fellow that she was gonna marry said, "No, I'm not gonna marry her." So it was there to do some things to everybody, but particularly to John Bell and to Betsy Bell. And finally, John kept telling his family, "Don't tell anybody about this. Don't tell anybody at church. Don't tell anybody anywhere about this, because they'll know something, we've done something bad to cause this to happen. Don't tell anybody about this." And so finally, it's getting so bad, he talked with his preacher. And the preacher said, "I'm gonna come over and see if it'll talk to me." And it did. Whatever the Bell witch would talk to the preacher and would quote the preacher's sermon that last Sunday and the Sunday before that, word for word. And after a while, the preacher said, "You've got to let people come in here. This is happening to y'all. You need help." And so they started letting a little bit at a time some neighbors come. And when they would come, the Bell witch would talk to them, tell them stories. It would be wonderful to have around. Still doing bad stuff to the Bells, but doing to the people, like, y'all, if I was John Bell, he'd be hurting me, but not y'all. And so people would stand in line. They didn't want to come to the Bell house because they wanted to hear the stories that whatever this was telling people out there. And sometimes they would have a house full of people, because people with their neighbors, just all of them wanted to come. And one night, the first preacher and then a second preacher happened to be there. And she said, "I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna tell you word for word what you said in your sermon," and did. I was there at the same time. You're speaking at the same time. I was there too. And word for word told you every word that you said out there. So the dueling preacher story became one of those stories that made people in the future believe that this story is true. And as you might guess, a lot of gossip going on. What did the Bells, are they lying? Or if they're not lying, what did they do bad to cause this to happen? But there a lot of gossiping was going on. Next. Now, one time, John Bell fed up and he said, "Why are you here?" And the witch said, "I came to kill you, John Bell," as I mentioned earlier. Why? Because she deserved killing. And John Bell dies as a relatively young man in 1820. And as the story would go, John Bell dying is the only death attributed to a spirit. The only person killed by that kind of creature. And so that is the core of the story. Now, Bloody Mary, I mentioned something very briefly earlier. Bloody Mary. Anybody know that story? I mentioned it earlier. What's the Bloody Mary story? What do? Has anybody done this? Anybody? You're gonna admit that you did it.
Sit in a dark room in front of a mirror, say her name 3 times.
Say her name 3 times and she will appear. Thank you for having the courage to say that. Probably everybody's done it, but you had the courage.
I didn't say her name 3 times.
Good point. Good point. You might be in trouble, by the way, that you actually talked to me. You might be, you didn't see that face. That was brutal. That was fear. That was a joke. But all jokes aside, it's hard for people not to believe this story, because if you don't believe it, she'll hurt you. She'll get you out there. Look at me. I'm here and I'm healthy. I'm 75 years old. I'm supposed to be dead. And some of y'all are too, that are 75 years old. Healthy as I can be. Yeah. Nothing bad's happened to me because I've told this story all over. Andrew Jackson. Anybody remember Andrew Jackson?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And so Andrew Jackson, and by the way, 2 of the Bell young men were soldiers for Andrew Jackson in the War of 1812. So, by that, according to the legend, he knows about the story, that something's going on, and more, and by the way, he's President of the United States by now, the President of the United States, and so he's hearing that not only is their story being told, but that witch or whatever it is hurting some of the Bell family and some other people by now. And so Andrew Jackson wasn't afraid of nobody until now. He wasn't afraid of anybody. So Andrew Jackson, with some of his soldiers, some of his people, came to Adams, Tennessee, and the witch talked to him and said really mean things to him. And he's going to stay for 3 or 4 or 5 days. The next morning, he's gone. And when he gets back, he says, I'd rather fight the British 100 times over than to ever face Bell Witch again. And by the way, this story's not true. But this is the story that came out of the Bell Witch legend, that Andrew Jackson. And by the way, Andrew Jackson was put into this because somebody I'm going to talk to you in a bit who wrote the first book. And he knew if I put a famous person in the book, and who could be more famous than Andrew Jackson, who lived close by, right north of Nashville, it'll sell more books. And so he put that in the book, and I'll return to that in a bit. And people told stories. People told stories, and you tell a story, but you want to tell a story better than his. You want to tell a story better than his when they're paying attention. And so people would make up their stories. And by the way, we don't have radio, we don't have television, we don't have all those things at a time when a whole lot of people couldn't read and write. But guess what we did? We told stories. We went to church on Sunday, and we told stories to each other. And so you told a story, and then somebody else told one, and somebody wanted to beat your story. And pretty soon, all kind of Bell Witch stories are happening in Adams, and then it'll spread out to other parts in the world as well. Please. Now, how did this story spread? Little place, there's more people here than about the time I'm talking about this many people, not much more out there. How did it spread over time? M.V. Ingram wrote a book called The Authentic History of the Bell Witch. What does authentic mean? It's true. It's true. Now, he ran a newspaper in Springfield, and he wasn't a particularly good writer, and so he's not making much money with his newspaper, and he thought, you know, everybody knows this story. I'm gonna write a story about the Bell Witch, and I'm gonna put all kinds of stuff in there, and maybe people will buy it. Not only did people buy it then, this book is still, which is the better part of 150 years, this book is still where you can buy it now. And he made a whole bunch of money out of that.
I have the book.
You
The
admit that in public?
authenticated edition. I have it with me.
When I see her, I'll tell her not to bother you. But yes, that book is still for sale, and all the way in it, he came up with incredible storytellers. But he made them up, but people out there believed they were true. They'd tell somebody and they'd buy the book, and they'd tell somebody and they'd buy the book, and generation after generation. But, oh, by the way, I got one too. Now, I say I got one of that. Here's my book of, no, not that one. Oh, here. Books. There have been dozens of books on the Bell Witch. I got just a handful. The Bell Witch Haunting, Pat Fitzhugh. Echoes of the Bell Witch in the 20th century. The Bell Witch. The Bell Witch full account. The official Bell Witch video. Bell Witch stories nobody ever heard. Has Jim Brooks ever been here to speak? Because he's from this general area, maybe a little further north. When the family lived next door. Our Family Trouble, the story of the Bell Witch of Tennessee. The infamous Bell Witch. Excuse me for a moment. The truth about the Bell Witch. The Bell Witch, an American haunting. Now, that is just a handful of books written about the Bell Witch legend. And a lot of people have made a lot of money writing books about the Bell Witch. So, we've even had a Hollywood movie called American Haunting. Anybody get a chance to see it? American Haunting is about 4 or 5, couples back there. And I have watched it as well. And I think you watched it. You didn't watch it with me. You saw that day. No, she would not watch it with me. And Hollywood movie, Sissy Spacek, Donald Sutherland, 2 major actors. And they told the story. And people loved it, and people went to it, and people still watch it today. It's still for sale. Anybody ever been to Carnegie Hall? You have? I have as well. And Carnegie Hall is one of the most highfalutin place you could go to hear music. They did a Bell Witch ballet at Carnegie Hall. That'd be Philadelphia, somewhere. I think it's up in Pennsylvania, isn't it? Pardon? New York. New York. At Carnegie Hall, and other places like that around the United States, and other places started doing ballets and music written about the Bell Witch. Now, David Alford, I know you know David. David Alford, who lives in Robertson County. He came to me, I guess now, better part of 20 years ago, and he's like 16 years old in high school, and he's going, Rick, and but I'm living on their farm. Remember I told you it took me 20 years to get out of Vanderbilt? I almost had to sell blood. And so I'm living, his father was my preacher. And so he said, Rick, I got a trailer that you could sleep, you could stay there cheap. And I did for a long time. And so anyway, David would come over and he would say, he's high school. Joe Burns High School. And he would say, Rick, I'm going to write about this. Rick, I'm going to write about that. And then one day he came and said, Rick, I'm going to write, not a book, I'm going to write a play about the Bell Witch. And when he got older, he wrote a play about the Bell Witch, and he also wrote a play about the Tobacco Night Riders. Anybody been to Adams to see those? Yep. And by the way, we're just got through with Smoke and starting the Bell Witch at the next weekend. So he wrote both of those books, and if not just hundreds, over the time, thousands of people have come to Adams, Tennessee, and the problem is, they can't find Adams, Tennessee. And so a lot of the play's already going when people are still coming in, because there's not much in Adams, Tennessee to do except come see the Bell Witch legend and the Night Riders. And so David wrote that, and we have a Bell Witch Fall Festival. So if you want to see the Bell Witch story, it's best I've ever heard it. I've watched movies and I've read books. David's piece is the best thing I've ever heard about the Bell Witch. You might want to come to Adams and do that. Next. Rick stories. Now remember, I'm talking to you right now. I'm alive, I'm healthy. Nothing's happened to me, even though I don't say what supposedly I'm supposed to say about the Bell Witch. And so I heard stories growing up about the Bell Witch. And by the way, if you're in our part of the world, you ain't gonna get big without hearing stories, because that story was the story, especially in time before we had television and radio out there. So you're hearing somebody talk, by the way, that has slept in the Bell Witch Cave. Not her. Well, Bell Witch Cave was supposedly, that's where the Bell Witch lived. That's where she lived when she wasn't out doing stuff. She lived in her cave. And a fellow named Bims Eden, do you ever know Bims? You knew Bims, and so he was a farmer, and it just happened that cave is on his land, and it's about to drive him crazy because everybody's trying to sneak on his land and go back and see the witch, and he's afraid if somebody gets hurt, he would get sued. And so he's spending his time running people off, and I was one of those, me and one of my cousins, two of my cousins. And so, wait a minute, all right, how old are you, sir?
14.
How old?
14.
Well now, sir, I'm Rick Gregory. And you are?
Hi.
Come to Adams, spend the night in the Bell Witch Cave. That look on the face said no. No. All right, when I was about your age, me and my two cousins, we ain't gonna be afraid of no witch. And by the way, I wasn't and I'm not now. The only thing I'm afraid of is her. I'm not afraid of no witch. And so, I won't name his name because he said, you gotta promise not to say, if you get killed, that I'm the one that took you almost out of the cave. The road runs across from Adams over into Kentucky, and there's a bridge right there over the Red River. So me and my two cousins waded up the Red River, spent the night in the Bell Witch Cave. Only bad thing happened, we about froze to death. Waded up in a river and wet about up to here, didn't think about bringing something, a towel or anything. Spent the night, here I am talking to you. Spent the night at the Bell Witch Cave, and Bims, after a while, realized, what am I doing? Spending all this time running kids off out of it. I can make more money off the cave than I could make raising tobacco. And he put some stuff in there to make sounds, and he made it where you could walk down and get to the cave and charge people to come to the cave. And he said, I made a whole lot of money over the Bell Witch than I ever did raising tobacco out there. And so he did. And by the way, you still come to the Bell Witch Cave today. Now, Bims has been gone for a long time, but some folks hold it, and they've done a lot more to it than BIMS did, so maybe come to Adams sometime and go into Bell Witch Cave. If something bad happens to you, it's not my fault. So, but it's still, what, people come by the dozens, by this time of year, by the hundreds, come over a week, a month or two, to the Bell Witch Cave. Now, my wife and I are at the ocean. I guess that's probably the better part of 20 years ago. We're at the ocean, and I'm walking down the ocean picking up shells, and there's a couple coming toward me, and it's hard to believe, I know that I stopped and talked to them. And of course I did. And they stopped and talked to me, and I said, where are y'all from? They said, we're from Sweden. And it's about 20 years ago. And they said, where are you from? And I said, a little town in Tennessee called Adams. They looked at each other, they talked with each other in Swedish. The woman looked at me, anybody want to guess what she said? Bell Witch. I said, how in the world do you know about the Bell Witch in Sweden? I said, Rick, everybody around the world knows the Bell Witch. So that really got me to thinking, oh, Rick, there's something here you can do. If they know in Sweden and other places as well. And so, also, I told you I worked in over 40 states. What I did for a long, long time, my job was if a company and their union's about to kill each other, my job was to come in, make both sides mad at me, and they had something in common, and we could together figure out how to solve the problem. So a strike would hurt everybody. So I became the strike guy. If you got a problem, call Rick. And after you retired teaching, she got to go with me. We got to travel all over for free. So in the same week, I'm in Portland, Oregon, as far as you can get away from the other side of the United States. And then Portland, Maine is on the other side. And so in the same week, I'm working in Portland, Oregon, and it was 3 days, got to have a big conference and with a good meal in a couple more days. And then I got a day off to fly to Portland, Oregon. So in the same week, I'm here and I'm here for 3 days and 3 days. So I'm in Portland, Oregon, sitting at the table, people at the table. Somebody said, where are you from? I said, a little town called Adams in Tennessee, and somebody at that table said, Bell Witch. A day flying, the next day, and by the way, I ate a lot of good seafood in Maine and Oregon. And we gotta go so you can have some good seafood too. And so I'm in Portland, Maine, same thing. Rick, where are you from? I'm from a little town called Adams in Tennessee. Anybody want to guess what somebody at the table said? Bell Witch. And in both cases, I said, how do you know? Rick, everybody knows the Bell Witch. So I started thinking, everybody knows the Bell Witch. When I stop traveling all around, I'm gonna write a book about the Bell Witch. And I did, and it's right up here. And it was UT Press's best-selling book 2 years ago when I wrote it. And that made the editor say, you're gonna write me another book. And that's I'm gonna write about the night riders. And actually it's about done. It's ready to go. And so I put my attention on the Bell Witch and to write a book. And it was a best-selling book. It's still selling. If anybody is interested in buying the book on the Bell Witch legend, don't see me, see her. I write them. She gets the money. So if anybody's interested, we're done. See Miss Patty over there, retired school teacher. By the way, that's my grandson Jameson here, and he's ready to go to bed. And he will be fairly soon. Now, Brendan Barker, and by the way, I got a dozen of these stories that I could tell like this. Brendan Barker was from White House. Some of you know where White House is, right outside. Part of it's in Robertson County, and part of it's in Sumner, I think, Sumner County. Anyway, he's from there, and he became a folklore writer after going to college and graduate school, and he ended up as a professor of folklore at Indiana University. And he got in contact with me and said, I know you're interested in the Bell Witch, and he says, I'm getting ready to do something on the Bell Witch, not about the story, but he explained to me what he was going to do, about how that fit in with other places in the world. And so, and some of you have been with us when we've had the plays in Adams, and so I would always introduce the plays. And so I'm up there talking, and I tell this story about Brendan, because Brendan came and spoke. He spoke one time for us there. And Brendan spoke, and when I introduced him, I talked about what he was going to talk about and everything, and about his mother, what she said, because his mother said, you cannot go to Adams, Tennessee. You cannot, because she will get you, and she might get us too. You cannot do it. And he said, well, I can't go because it's her car. But when he got old enough to have threatened to get his own car, his mother finally said, okay, I'm tired of hearing this. You can take my car. But remember, when you leave Adams, stop before you get out of Adams and look at all 4 tires and make sure there's not a rock or a stone in any tire. Because part of the Bell Witch legend is, if you take a rock out of the Bell Witch cave, which I have done, by the way, if you take a rock out of the Bell Witch cave, she will come get you. And she said, let's don't take any chances. Make sure there's no rocks, or if it's so, you're not coming home. There. So, Brenda, and I was telling this story in Adams. We had like 200 people out there, and this woman stands up in the back and she says, that's me. She said, I'm the one that did that. I said, you're Brenda's mother? Yeah. I said, hey ma'am, how are you? And she says, not real happy. But she said, yes I am. I'm glad to be here, and that you mentioned my son out there. Next. Now, supposedly nothing bad's supposed to happen to me because I denied the Bell Witch legend. So, I'm going to tell you truth that some things did happen. Robertson County Historical Society, I spoke with them. I denied that it was true. Within 2 days after that, my wife is working outside in her flowers, and she gets 100 seed ticks. Not 5, not 10, 100 seed ticks. Guess whose fault that is? It's not her fault for not putting something on. Yes, you married her, you know. It was mine. She got seed ticks because I told the story. Is that a fair statement? I ate a whole lot of peanut butter and jelly for a while out there. And she got 100 seed ticks. The refrigerator died that same day. And she liked that, by the way. She got a new refrigerator. Guess who bought the refrigerator? Yep. She got a new refrigerator. And our oldest daughter is a nurse in Clarksville. What's her hope? Tenova. And she's a nurse. And Patty and I and some friends of ours have tickets to go see the Old Crow Medicine Show. Anybody ever see or know the Old Crow Medicine Show? Wonderful music. And we got tickets to go. Oh, it's going to be wonderful. She gets MRSA, and we have to take care of him. When he was a baby. And so the people that we gave our tickets to, they said, oh, Rick, it was wonderful. Sorry you didn't get to come. This is wonderful. And also, the same week that I denied that the Bell Witch was true, in front of all the people in Adams, I was going kayak. Anybody kayaker in here besides me? I'm a kayak, right there. He's my kayaker buddy. And so we live on the Red River, and so you'll never probably talk with anybody that bought an 80-acre farm to get a gravel bar. So I could go kayaking anytime I want to, when she lets me. And so, I'm gonna go kayaking, right after we didn't get to go see Old Crow Medicine Show. And so I'm in a hurry, so I get down to the river, or almost to the river, to the gravel bar. I gotta go down this hill, a tree's laying across it. We didn't have a storm, nothing like that, there's a tree. Well, being a dummy, I went to the house, and I'm real happy, I wanna go on the river. I get my chainsaw, come out, I start cutting stuff, and I got this foot in the wrong place. I cut something, it fell on that foot, broke my big toe and the one next to it. And finally, I'm starting to think, you know, maybe I better shut up. But all those stories are true. Flip over. Now, Kate, by the way, Kate, anybody know Kate is what became known from the Bell Witch? The Bell Witch was Kate. And so, finally, Kate, I'm sorry, leave me alone. You got other people to go pick on. And so, I was getting ready to go someplace and speak.
Clarksville?
I was getting ready to go to Clarksville and speak with these folks. I don't know if they'll ever let me come back, by the way. You might not let me come back here either, but yes, they did. I've been with them 2 or 3 times. And so, I'm going there to speak, and so I've got some books. I say, this is my desk. By the way, we live in a house, it's her house. It's my room in the basement, that's my desk. Is that a fair statement? That's it. Everything else is her. I bought it, but it's her house, but except for that. So, I've got books laying on the desk, because I'm getting ready to go here and talk. And I've got some books I'm now writing a piece on the Red River after I finish the one that I'm on now. It's gonna be the Red River. All those books are here, and upstairs, got some men working on a commode upstairs, and water not just drops, just by gallon, came right straight out of and fell on those books. All right. I'm sorry. I ain't gonna quit talking, but I'm still sorry. So, now those are my stories. Is there anybody here, and if you got the courage, anybody here got a story? Maybe not just about the Bell Witch, but a story about something. Maybe a story you thought, like, I'll write about that one of the days. Or anybody ever had an experience with the Bell Witch? Or how did you find out about the Bell Witch legend originally? How'd you what?
She said, what did I do wrong?
So you saw the Bell Witch?
No, sir. I didn't, I'm from Kentucky, I'm from Indiana, and I never heard of her, I'm sorry.
Wait a minute, say that to me again. You're from Indiana and?
Northern Indiana, and I've never heard of the Bell Witch, till I moved here.
Which moved here?
I'm from Southern Indiana, and I never heard either till I moved here.
Well, I went to undergraduate school in Indianapolis, and they all heard about it. Guess why? I told them. I told them. Yeah. Anybody got a story?
Yeah.
Anybody?
You know the Charlie Elder story?
Tell me.
Charlie Elder owned a bookstore in Nashville on Elliston Place,
Yeah.
and he republished the Ingram book.
Yep.
And one of his stories was that he was taking a carload of Ingram books someplace to put them where they would be sold. And the witch got after him in the car on the way home and harassed him so for publicizing the story about her, that he got out of the car at home, and then he woke up in the driveway, and he had all these little pieces of gravel embedded in his forehead that they had to remove at the emergency room. That's his story.
That's the story. And by the way, when I was at Vanderbilt, that's where I would go for fun.
The Belgian bookstore.
The bookstore. It's right, real close. Yeah, that's a good story.
Sold a lot of books.
So it's a lot of books, yes. Matter of fact, that's where I bought my first Bill Wicks book. Anybody else? Anybody else got a story? Anybody? Are you all scared?
It's awfully close to Halloween.
You what?
It's awfully close to Halloween.
But do look at this. I'm healthy. I'm happy. I'm alive. For right now. Sir.
Yeah, I just have, something, Mark knows about this, and my grandmother, when she was a little girl, she told me that she saw the Ku Klux Klan, and she and her dad were on the back porch, and they came riding up the horses, and you know, they had on the hoods and the sheets and stuff, and they told them to go inside, that they would be okay, they would be safe. But over the years, come find out it wasn't Ku Klux Klan, it was the Night Riders that they saw coming into Russellville.
Yes. And my next book, which is going to UT Press next week, I hope, goes next week, is about the Night Riders. And you wrote a good book on the Night Riders. And so, remind me, what's the name of your book?
Stand There and Tremble.
Stand and Tremble. Yep. And by the way, that was a Night Rider term out there. Anybody else? Anybody else got a story? Please, ma'am.
I have this in my grandmother's own handwriting, my great-grandmother's own handwriting, and she lived in Muhlenberg County, died at 105. And, she wrote that on one of their farms, she and her brother were apple picking because they took them to Elkton for apple cider, something or other they were making out of them. And while they were picking apples, two men came up and introduced themselves as Frank and Jesse. And that's in her own handwriting. I think the library, I brought one here for the library.
And I've had people tell me in Robertson County that sometime or another, the James brothers were in Robertson County hiding. You know that story.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, yep.
It's
Please.
the Height family in Logan County. The Height family south of Russellville, they were
John
cousins.
Q. Height.
Yeah.
We had a fellow came into Russellville probably post 15 years ago, so his name is Eric James. He wrote a book called Stray Leaves, you know, about the James, and it's been said that there's more kinfolk to Jesse and Frank James than anyone in the nation, you know, they claim to them. So he was at our old courthouse, he was speaking about the story and everything. He might have anticipated what was coming, but he said, you know, people talk about kinship and all this stuff and all this called robbing and loot and all that stuff. And finally, I just raised my hand, I said, you don't think there's any relatives here that related to Jesse James? Just ask. And so he asked, and everyone in the whole place stood.
In Robertson County, Kay Bagby is said that she is kin.
Younger?
Yeah, that's right, the Youngers. Yeah, the Youngers, yeah. Anybody else? Anybody else see anything? All right. It's been wonderful to be with
Any
you.
questions or remarks you want to make for?